At the start of the story, we see thousands of people whose eyes had lost even the last ray of hope. They had been craving a single drop of water for weeks. But above this vast wasteland, piercing through the clouds, stood a very tall mountain touching the sky. On the highest peak of this mountain, King Immortan Joe sat upon his throne. The ruler of this fortress appears before his people. Standing at a high point, he announces that water will be released for the public today. As soon as they hear this news, the people below become alert. People who have suffered scarcity, hunger, and thirst for years. Their bodies are weak from exhaustion, and their lives have become nothing but a struggle for survival. They all look up toward the king. The king opens a valve on a water pipe, and water begins flowing down from the height of the mountain. The moment they see the water, the crowd becomes uncontrollable. Men, women, and children grab their containers and rush toward the water. Everyone tries to gather as much water as possible because they know this chance won't last long. After a few moments, the king stops the flow of water. Suddenly, joy turns into despair. Some people's containers are full, while countless others are left empty-handed. The scarcity of water pits them against each other, and soon fighting and scuffling break out there. The king standing above watches all this silently, then turns and goes back inside his fortress, while below, his subjects keep fighting each other over a few drops of water. Now we come to the real story. Hidden within this film is a very deep narrative. Today we will narrate this entire story from beginning to end, moment by moment. So let's get started. First, it's important to understand what kind of world this is where this incident takes place. Decades ago, humans destroyed their own world with their own hands. Nuclear wars happened, oil ran out, water ran out, crops were destroyed. Cities turned into heaps of rubble, and what remained after this destruction was a wasteland. An endless wasteland where there is nothing but sand, and life is only granted to those who are more powerful and more ruthless than others. In this wasteland, the most valuable things are gasoline, petrol, aqua-cola, water, and bullets. Whoever possesses these things is the king of this world. And in this world, there is one such king named Immortan Joe. He is the man who has seized control of a fortress-like city called the Citadel, built on a tall rocky cliff. Inside this fortress are enormous reserves of water, and Immortan Joe controls these reserves to keep millions of hungry, thirsty people enslaved. Immortan Joe himself is a sick old man. His lungs are destroyed, so he wears a dangerous breathing mask that helps him breathe. His body is weak, but he has convinced his people that he is a god. His followers worship him like a deity. His army is the war boys, young men sick from radiation who know they will die soon, but who want to die fighting in Immortan Joe's name. To them, this is martyrdom. From here the scene shifts to our story's main character, Max, who arrives in King Immortan Joe's territory in search of water. Max stands in the middle of the Sahara, surveying his surroundings, when suddenly a small lizard runs across the sand toward him. He doesn't waste a moment. He immediately traps it with his foot and starts eating it to satisfy his hunger. He is still eating it when suddenly a large cloud of dust appears on the horizon. Moments later, he realizes this isn't dust, but a convoy of fast racer war vehicles heading straight toward him. Sensing danger, Max immediately gets into his car, starts the engine, and speeds off into the desert at full speed. The pursuing vehicles also chase after him. The Sahara becomes a dangerous battlefield of pursuit, where death lurks at every moment. Max tries his best to escape them, but the enemies don't let up. Finally, a powerful blast is fired. From the force of the explosion, his car flies into the air, flips over several times, and is destroyed. Injured, he tries to crawl out of the wreckage, but before he can escape, his attackers overpower him. He is arrested and taken to a terrifying fortress-like place. There, his hands and feet are shackled with heavy chains, and he is suspended in the air. Some people cut his hair, while another person uses some modern machine to inscribe special writing on his body. Then a red-hot piece of metal, like a glowing ember, is pulled from a blazing furnace and brought toward him. Seeing this, Max uses all his strength to try to save himself. Amazingly, he breaks free from his chains and runs to save his life. During his escape, he passes through narrow tunnels, rocky caves, and dangerous passages. After running for a while, he reaches an underground water reservoir and throws himself into it. But his freedom doesn't last more than a few moments. The enemies are also right behind him. They drag him out of the water, restrain him forcefully, and fit a metallic mask over his face, locking it so he can neither speak nor resist. Max's own story is very painful. Back in the past, he was a police officer, but in the destruction and violence of this world, he lost his loved ones, his wife, and his children. He couldn't save them, and this guilt still haunts him every night. Since then, he doesn't want to connect with anyone. He just wants to survive, nothing more than that. At the Citadel, he isn't treated like a human being at all. He is turned into a blood bag, meaning his blood is used to keep sick war boys alive. A metallic mask is fitted over his face, his blood type is marked on his body, and he is locked in a prison cell like an animal. But another story is also unfolding inside the Citadel. Immortan Joe's most trusted commander is Immortan Furiosa, a brave and powerful woman missing one hand. In its place, she has an artificial metallic hand. Furiosa is one of Immortan Joe's army's top figures and drives a heavy war truck called the War Rig. Today, her usual mission is to head to Gastown and bring back oil. But Furiosa's got a different plan in her heart. The War Rig sets off from the Citadel, and everything seems normal at first. But after a while, when the road splits into two, instead of going toward Gastown, Furiosa takes the other direction. This surprises all the war boys. The Citadel is quickly informed. When Immortan Joe finds out Furiosa has left the fixed route, he immediately senses danger. He prepares his army and starts the chase. The real story was that Furiosa had rebelled. In a secret part of the War Rig, 5 young girls were hiding. These were the wives of King Immortan Joe. The king already had 2 sons. One was completely paralyzed, and the other was very strong, like a warrior, but he too was born with damaged lungs just like his father. The king was trying to have a healthy baby from one of these wives who could take over his empire. Furiosa had freed them all. Her goal was to take them to the Green Place, the place where she had lived in her childhood and from where she had been kidnapped years ago. Furiosa knew that if she were caught, she would be given an extremely painful death. But despite this, she chose the path of freedom. This was the moment that changed the entire story. When Immortan Joe learns that his wives have escaped, he becomes intensely furious. He sends his entire army after them. Meanwhile, Max is bound together with a sick war boy named Nux. Max's blood is being used to keep Nux alive. Max now becomes part of the battle as a prisoner, his hands tied. His face is covered, and he's strapped to Nux's car. Hundreds of vehicles start the chase after the War Rig. Then, suddenly, a very dangerous storm appears ahead. The sky begins flashing with lightning. Clouds of sand rise up like mountains. Furiosa speeds the War Rig right into this devastating bloodstorm. The enemies follow her in as well. Explosions happen everywhere. Vehicles are destroyed, and this is the moment when Max gets a chance to gain his freedom. After the storm ends, he breaks his bonds and comes face to face with Furiosa. A fierce fight breaks out between the two. Max wants to stay alive. Furiosa doesn't trust anyone either. Both attack each other with full force. But eventually, they realize that if they keep fighting each other, Immortan Joe's army will catch them. So they make an uneasy truce. Now they have only one goal: to survive. Inside the War Rig, Max meets these 5 women for the first time. These women were certainly frightened, but they hadn't given up. Splendid was pregnant, and Furiosa was going to help her when Immortan Joe's baby was born. She wanted to take them to the Green Place. She believed that once they got there, everything would change. There would be water, there would be trees, there would be life. But first they had to complete a long and dangerous journey. Ahead lay the merciless Sahara. Behind them was Immortan Joe's entire army, and in between, only hope remained. Furiosa, Max, and the other women kept pushing forward continuously, but their journey wasn't easy. Immortan Joe wasn't alone in pursuing them. 2 powerful allies of his had also entered the field. The first was the ruler of Gastown, whom people called the People Eater, and the second was the bullet farmer, who controlled the production of bullets and weapons. When they found out that Furiosa had rebelled, they too set out with their armies in pursuit of the War Rig. Now the situation was such that on one side was Immortan Joe's army, on another side were Gastown's fighters, and on the third side were bullet farmers' armed soldiers. The War Rig was becoming surrounded by enemies from all sides. At night, Bullet Farmer approached with his heavy vehicles and began firing indiscriminately. A rain of bullets began. The sky lit up with the glow of explosions. Meanwhile, Max made a dangerous decision. He went out alone into the darkness with just one gun. Furiosa and the other women waited anxiously for him. From somewhere far off, the sound of gunfire kept coming. Sometimes an explosion could be heard, sometimes screams. Then suddenly silence fell. After a while, Max returned. His clothes were covered in dust and blood. In his hand was the bullet farmer's weapon. He said nothing, but everyone understood that he had eliminated the enemy alone. But during this same journey, a tragic incident occurred. Splendid, who was pregnant, was trying to stop the enemies. She climbed onto the side of the war rig so that Immortan Joe would be afraid to attack it, since she was carrying his unborn child. But fate didn't favor her. In one dangerous moment, she fell down. Immortan Joe's vehicle struck her. Splendid was severely injured. Every effort to save her failed. Now not only did Splendid die, but her unborn child also couldn't survive. Hearing this news, the entire group was plunged into grief. For Furiosa, this was a huge shock. She began to feel that perhaps the price of freedom was very high. After several days of travel, they finally got close to the place Furiosa had been dreaming about for years, the Green Place. The very land where she had spent her childhood, where there were trees, where there was water, where there was life. She parked the truck, got down, and moving forward, began calling out loudly for her family. She was still looking around when suddenly some old women appeared, riding their motorcycles down the sand dunes like fierce warriors. They all quickly gathered around Furiosa. Then suddenly Furiosa's sister came running and embraced Furiosa. Seeing her people after so many years, tears came to Furiosa's eyes. But the happiness didn't last long. When she asked about the Green Place, one old woman silently lowered her head. Then she told the truth. The Green Place no longer existed. That land had been destroyed years ago. The water had dried up, the trees had died, and the lush green fields had turned into a toxic bog. Hearing this, it was as if the sky fell on Furiosa. She collapsed to her knees on the sand. Her dreams were shattered. The hope that had carried her through this long journey was now gone. Hearing her pain-filled scream, everyone fell silent. Now they were all caught in a new dilemma. The destination they had set out to find didn't even exist. The old women advised that they travel further into the wasteland. Maybe they'd find some new place somewhere. But this was just a hope, not a certainty. Everyone was exhausted. Everyone was in despair. Then Max, for the first time, gave a suggestion that changed everything. He stepped forward and told Furiosa, "We're going back." Furiosa was stunned and said, "Back to the Citadel?" Max nodded and said, "Yes." Then he explained his reasoning. Immortan Joe had brought his entire army after them. Right now, the Citadel was almost empty. It had water reserves, food, and life. If they went back and eliminated Immortan Joe, they could free the Citadel and change the lives of thousands of people. It was a dangerous plan, almost like suicide, but it was also the only way. Furiosa thought for a moment, then looked at Max and nodded silently. The decision was made. Now they weren't running. Now they were going to fight, and ahead of them lay the biggest battle of the entire wasteland. The decision was made. The time for running was over. Now was the time to fight. Furiosa turned the war rig around, and the convoy set off back toward the Citadel. But this time, things were different. Before, they were moving away from the enemy. Now they were heading straight into the enemy's heart. On the other side, Immortan Joe was also pursuing them at full speed. He was certain that Furiosa would get trapped somewhere, but he had no idea that the prey had now become the hunter. As the war rig got closer to the Citadel, the enemy vehicles also closed in. Clouds of dust rose everywhere. Engines roared, gunfire rang out, and explosions went off. This was the biggest and most dangerous chase of the entire film. Max, Furiosa, and the rest of the women were fighting with all their strength. The enemies were attacking from every side. Sometimes a vehicle would ram into the side of the war rig. Sometimes a warrior would swing through the air on long poles to attack. But nothing could stop them. During this final battle, another character was also meeting his destiny. Nux, the war boy who had initially been Immortan Joe's most loyal soldier, the young man who used to shout, "Witness me," and who considered dying to be his greatest achievement. But now he had changed. Capable's love and compassion had opened his eyes. He had come to understand that Immortan Joe was no god, but a tyrannical ruler. The battle was entering its final stage. The war rig was getting close to the Citadel, but enemy vehicles were blocking the path. If the path didn't open, everyone would die. Nux looked at Capable for a moment. For the first time, there was peace in his eyes. Then, smiling, he made his final decision. The remaining companions in the war rig were pulled out and put into Immortan Joe's car. When Nux saw that Immortan Joe's son had climbed onto the war rig and had broken part of the engine with his strength, and that the engine section of the war rig had caught fire, he quickly turned the war rig toward a hillside. Due to the high speed, the war rig overturned, and the oil tanker burst into a terrifying fire, which killed Nux but also took the life of Immortan Joe's son along with him. Nux had sacrificed his life, but this time he hadn't died for some false god. He died for his friends, he died for freedom, and that was his true victory. Finally, they reached the gates of the citadel. Thousands of people were gathered above, hungry, thirsty, oppressed people, the very people who had lived under Immortan Joe's tyranny for years. When they saw Furiosa, they were first shocked. Then they saw Immortan Joe's body, and everything changed. The citadel's gates opened. Furiosa was taken up. People began gathering around her. Some cried with joy, some screamed, and some laughed because for the first time, they had gained freedom. Then came the moment they had waited years for. The great water gates were opened. Clean water began cascading down like a waterfall. People rushed toward it like madmen. Some filled their hands, some splashed water on their faces, some looked up at the sky in gratitude. This wasn't just water, it was freedom, it was new life, it was hope. While everyone was celebrating, Max stood silently to one side. Furiosa saw him. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, no promise was made, no emotional speech was given. Just a silent respect, a gratitude for one another. Max knew his work was complete. He had given these people a new future, and perhaps himself as well. Then he slowly began walking into the crowd. Within moments, he disappeared among the people. Just as he had come, he left, alone. But this time there was a difference. The emptiness in his eyes wasn't the same as before, because today he hadn't fought just to survive. Today he had fought to make someone else's life better, and perhaps that is the true strength of humanity. This isn't just an action film, but a powerful tale of hope, freedom, sacrifice, and humanity, teaching that even after destruction, a new world can be built. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and comment for the next video.